We've got we got a web caller calling in. Uh,
Hi.
Lulu's calling in. Wanting, I guess it doesn't say anything here about your religious beliefs or anything else, but Lulu says, "What are your guys' thoughts on energy frequency manifestation?" Lulu, what are we talking about? How can we help?
I know. I am a um seeker, of truth, and I have personally deconstructed.
Hello. Oh,
Uh-oh.
you're calling from the web client. If you're on your cell phone, I'm pretty sure that it just went to sleep. So you have to tap your phone to wake it up, and then you have to also tap the browser,
Okay.
and then we can hear. And now we can hear you again.
You can hear
Perfect.
me?
We
Yes.
can now.
Okay. Okay. So as a I deconstructed um and so I know this is primarily for like like Christians calling in, but I've just recently, this is going to sound funny, but I hadn't really considered like atheist view because just coming out of deconstruction and like fundamental Christianity, it felt so good to not, my personal, what I came out of was Calvary Chapel. So very fear driven, very, um, so can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So, yeah, so it just felt so good to shed the layers of that fear and not, and kind of take back that power of like, okay, I don't have to have this like wound of dreading the future, and I don't have to carry that around anymore. So I've just considered myself, it allowed me to kind of explore that spiritual side rather than it just be this dun, 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 like not really good news, like you have to believe this in order to get to the good stuff in a sense. So I've just kind of been in this space of, you know, just allowing not having to judge people has been amazing. Like not having to do all the, like, be in that negative space of, I feel like Christianity offers. Anyway, so I was just curious but I've been drawn to shows like this because I love hearing the critical thinking side of it. And it's kind of shocking to come back and hear the just the closed mindedness. Like I knew Christianity was closed minded, but like to actually hear it talked out has been just awesome. And I love listening to it because you guys
Well,
lay
I'm
it out
I'm prepared for
great.
you to suggest that I'm closed-minded, but I have no idea what spiritual means or what a spiritual side
Yeah.
is or how anybody could possibly explore a spiritual side.
Okay. For sure.
So what do you mean by that, Lulu? What do you mean by spiritual? Because I'm equally confused. And you might
Your
have to
phone might
tap
have
on
gone
the
to
phone
sleep
again.
again. You may have to tap again.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're back.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So when I deconstructed, I was uh, just from my own experience, like seeing the universe, and I am not a scientist, so I can look at the world around me and be amazed, and I don't know how it all came to be, but I can see the mystery of it and the beautifulness and I know it's not perfect because but it's so for me it was just such a relief to be like, oh, I can just I can I can wonder at the creation, because that's my background, so I think just holding on to that and
I'm
and
with
then
you.
and then
I'm with
understanding.
you on
Yeah, go ahead.
wonder. I'm with you on wonder. I still don't know what you mean
Yes,
by spiritual, and
sure.
I don't buy the notion that that the universe is a creation. But that's probably just you're
Yeah,
calling it that out of habit, I would suspect. But I still don't know what spiritual means.
right. So I think so for me I think it's the okay, and then the more that I learned about like frequency and vibration and that certain emotions have different frequencies. Like, what are your
That's not
guys'
true.
thoughts on that? It's
I have
not?
no reason to
Well,
Okay.
think that's true. It doesn't even make sense to me to say emotions have different frequencies.
yeah,
What are
what
we
does that
talking about?
even mean?
Right. Yeah. No, I hear you. I it's it's interesting to me to hear, like, what about quantum physics? Like, do you guys,
No, 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 no.
what are your
You need to go back to. You asked us about
I'm
the frequency of emotion, and I
right?
need to know. I need to know anything at all.
Like
You
the
said you
resonance,
researched
like
that and you
the
learned about
human
it.
resonance. Yes.
What do you think frequency and resonance are? Tell me what they
I
are.
think that, yeah, I like, for me, I think that matter in and of
okay.
itself, like when they have zoomed
Hang
into
on.
it.
Hang on.
Yeah. Mama, I found it toy. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yep.
I do not accept the notion that there are esoteric truths. I don't think that
Okay.
that what a frequency is true for you, but not for somebody else. Do you think that that's the case? That frequency is something for you, and that it's not that for somebody else?
Absolutely. No, I think everyone
Okay.
has.
So
Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
got you. So we're still waiting for what you mean by spiritual and what you mean by frequency. And I would tell you that there is absolutely no reality that begins at this point that is in any way improved by you starting to talk about quantum physics or quantum mechanics. Those have nothing to do with anything spiritual, and they may not have anything to do with anything that you're talking about frequency wise. So we don't need to go anywhere near that. I just need you to explain, what do you mean by spiritual and what are you talking about with frequencies? Because I don't recognize
Right.
what either of them mean or that it's real.
For sure. Yeah. 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 I think, like, my journey has been looking at these ancient texts of just, without labeling them as anything, other than other people in different times trying to figure out philosophical and science questions. So I don't. So I think when people say spiritual, to me, and what I have, and I mean, I'm a busy mom. I have 4 kids, so deconstructing has been a challenge in and of itself. Just being busy and not, like, not being able to take a bunch of classes, or, you know, so just sort of doing this in my, spare time. Um, so I think, so can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
What do
So
you
we're
mean by
looking.
spiritual and what do you mean by frequency?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, like, Christianity really strips people of their power in and of itself, because you're always outsourcing, like, what you are perfectly capable of making right decisions, of choosing love, in that moment of, you know
What do you mean by spiritual and what do you mean by frequency? I don't think that what Christianity does to people is remotely relevant to defining spiritual.
right. No, I know. And I'm
Then every time we do this, every time we try to get you back on track to ask you to just simply define what it is that you're talking about, you do the exact same thing. You say right and then no, I know. And yet all you're doing is acknowledging that every word that came out of your mouth after we asked you a question was irrelevant to the question. How many kids you have, what's going on, the fact that you're not an expert, that you've studied this, quantum mechanics. What do you mean by spiritual? We can't move forward to talk about spiritual searches until we know what you mean by spiritual.
I think being connected to something higher.
Okay. Connected to something higher. So if I'm touching a building or a bird,
Right. No, I think something more, like, the parts that we can't see.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I know. I get that. I think that
Oh my
that's where
God.
the no, I no, I'm saying, like, there's lots of, like, we can't see the wind, like, we can't touch the wind, but it's there. So, like,
I can absolutely demonstrate wind, and in fact, you can see it with the right equipment, but we can
right.
definitely see the
So,
effects of wind. Why I'm done. Go ahead, Paul. I'm going to
no,
be
that's
no good here,
good,
and
Paul.
that's my fault. That's my fault. I'm not going to be good at this.
So so Lulu, yeah, we're as you can sense, we're a little bit frustrated because you're calling us to ask what we think about frequency and what we think about these kind of things. So do you at least conceptually understand why your inability to define the things is tricky? Do you at least understand that
Of
conceptually?
course. Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes,
So
absolutely.
is part
Like,
of your journey to define these things for yourselves, or do you don't care? The is this kind of a vibes thing? Like, is this, or have you
yeah, I
tried to
mean,
define them?
I'm happy to be in a space where I'm open-minded and I can explore these things without feeling like, something awful is going to happen after I die, or I have to figure this
Okay.
out in order to have a fulfilling life. Like, I'm okay with just
S-
being, and I'm
s-
okay with that. Like, I'm just,
Right. But you called in.
I
But you
don't
called
want
in
there to
because you
be
you
these
said you're
lines where, like, we all, you know, we I just want to be able to explore these things with others with
But
totally different
are
points
Matt
of
and I
view.
are Matt and I wrong to, and you might be calling them lines, to at least want definitions of words? Is that too closed minded?
No, of course not. I honestly,
Okay. So spirituality, Lulu, you said spirituality was connection to something greater than yourself. I feel like perhaps you mean that something just non-individualistic, I feel like, is what you maybe mean. But I feel like we maybe can't go there. But you definitely made a claim about emotions having frequencies. Is that something you still would say, that you can say as a fact, that emotions have frequencies? And you might have to tap your phone again.
I'm so sorry. I think mostly I was, what I meant was, like, where our attention goes, like, things, like, that's where the energy will flow, or things of
Wait,
that
so
sort.
wait, so you're basically saying you're not using the word frequency any longer, and you seem to
Well,
be using energy in terms of not like matter and energy,
well,
but
to me, it's
just
the things that we can't see, but we know that when we put our mind on something, or we sit, or meditation, or we calm our nervous system, like things like that. Like, we
okay.
can't really
But
see it, like, it's subtle.
but you,
So,
but Lulu, you recognize that if you were in an MRI and you started to meditate, that neuroscientists could absolutely observe your brain chemistry adapting to your change of
of
attitude,
course,
right? Like,
yes.
okay, so they are things you could see
Oh, for sure, yes.
theoretically,
I mean, like, in your own body, you don't know, but if it's something from the outside showcasing, yes, or, like,
right?
for sure.
So y- am I right in saying you no longer will assert that emotions have a frequency? Like, that's that you'll drop that from your list of
Sure. And
claims?
I'm very new to all of this, so it's what I take in, and I don't have very many people to to
Yeah,
hear, like, what.
so what do
Yeah,
you just what do you think frequency is?
I think that it has. I think that everything has a frequency, and everything is vibrating at a certain whatever
So
level.
you
Some
think
has more
frequency
dense.
you think frequency is related to vibrations?
I think it's in the same
Fre-
family.
so
I
frequency is, let me ask you, if you so I as far as I know, frequency is how often something happens, right? That's the whole
Okay,
extent of what frequency is, right? How often something how frequently does my dog eat? How frequently
right.
do we hold this show? How many times a minute is your heart beating? Like, those are
So it's
those
like
are
in
things that
time
you just
increments.
count, right? Right.
Yes.
So if you said that emotions have frequency, that's you're literally to me just saying, how
I might have
often do I
innocently
hate
said I
somebody?
might
You're
I might mean vibration. like
Okay,
how it makes
so
us. Yeah,
okay, so
that's
now
fine.
vibration is an oscillation, right? It's a physical thing going back and a physical thing gyrating within a set of space, right? Is that what
Sure.
you mean
Yeah.
by vibration? Okay. Now you understand that all molecules to some extent, are vibrating,
Right.
and that if that all that we would be able to tell from, if you wanted to say that, you know that vibrations in some sense, and I'm not even saying this is true, but if you when we feel one thing versus another thing, the number of vibrations of molecules was different. That really wouldn't tell us anything about that there's anything in the universe beyond our brain, right?
Right.
So what do you mean then when you call and say, what do you think about that emotions have energy or emotions have vibrations, and my dog's about to go nuts? You know, you understand why we don't see that as a coherent thing to even ask a question?
I can. Yeah. I think the research and the exploration that I have done, it makes sense to me as I'm taking it in. And I think I think I'm holding on to the creator and things like that because, and I think it's just still a layering, taking off of layers.
So,
And I hadn't
uh,
really listened to. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say, research in this extent means what? What does research look like when you talk about that you've researched that emotions have frequencies? What does research mean in this case?
I think that when we're more in our heart and we calm our nervous system down, which all really goes back to like we really don't know what else there is except what comes from our mind, which is similar to what because is that's how you view the how this experience of life like
Yes, I've yet
it's
to see any reason that we are having experiences that is anything other than related to what's happening in our mind, though I'm open to it
right.
if one of those cases.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
but what do you mean by research? You then told me what was intuitive to you, and if you
so one
mean
of
that
the first
research
things
is
that
just
yeah
what's intuition, that's not great, right?
was yes. One of the first things that I stumbled on was like heart and mind coherence, and that helped me sort of realize like okay, it's not necessarily like
When
brain.
you say heart, do you mean literally the organ that pumps blood?
um yes, I mean that's where the yes. So like when you're able to like
So
um
so what does it
bring
mean that the
awareness.
organ that
Yeah.
what does it mean to say that the organ that pumps my blood is coherent with my brain? What does that mean?
It's from the research from the Heart Math Institute. Um, when there's like a coherence and like when we calm our nervous system,
What no but no but
there's like
what
neurites
does
in our heart
what do
that when
what do
they're
you
synced
think
with the mind,
coherence means? What does
I
coherence
think it
mean?
means stepping into that space of I'm able to calm my.
So do you literally mean that when your heart rate lower, that when you're more calm, that the number of beats per minute, the actual frequency of your heart, are you just saying that when you're calm, that your heart beats less frequently? Oh, I think, and you might be muted again.
I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. I mean, technically, I guess.
Because do you think
Which
that
I can
do you
totally
think
see
that
where
your
it's like why bring the spiritual into this, which I
yeah,
totally get. Like I'm not sold. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, and that's fine because you weren't even able to define what spiritual means. So that's why Matt and I are like, well, yeah, there's an organ in your
right. And I
chest
use
that moves.
spiritual
There's an
because
organ
I
in your
don't know
chest that
what
moves
other.
blood around, and
Right.
that
No,
like
but you
do
asked
you
what research. So the research
okay?
Well,
that kind of broke the mold for me was from the math heart or heart math
so
I think
Paul,
institute.
Go ahead, Matt.
Paul, Paul, the Heart Math Institute is a pseudoscience woo factory that is not science at all, but promotes paranormal and clairvoyant activities. So Her research is in a bunch of new age claptrap.
Okay.
Okay.
But Lulu, like I kept asking you questions, like right, and I was trying to do it methodologically. I was trying to do it in a systematic way, right? I was trying to say, well, what do you mean by resonance? What do you mean by frequency? What do you mean by coherence? Because you were throwing out these words that if I literally was breaking down your sentence, it was like you're just saying the organ that pumps blood doesn't do it as often
Right.
when I'm calm. And that's like a nothing statement, right? Like you understand that holds no significance beyond biology. And this is what I would love for you to do when you're researching is like
Sure.
don't move past the sentence until because I was in the same boat as you. I believed lots
Yeah.
of weird things. But it literally came down to when I was like, well, what what does this sentence even mean, and what is it saying, and is it saying anything beyond just something that intuitively feels nice? So when you're
Right.
going to call in and ask Matt and I, what do we think about sentences that make me feel a certain kind of way? Then we're just going to be like, well, yeah, that's that. There's actually science behind why certain things make you feel a certain kind of way,
Yeah.
and that you can't attribute anything to that other than that that's how biology works. So
For sure.
do you feel like you got a sense of what our thoughts are on this kind of line of thinking?
I do, and I didn't before, so I appreciate it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was probably your goal, was to get how someone
It
else might
was.
think about this. Okay.
It
Well,
really
I
was,
hope that
and
we
I'm
were able
sorry
to
for
help.
taking up your time. It was.
No,
Yes. It
this
really.
was great. Okay.
Yes.
And I would encourage you to like look up the word epistemology and how do we know things and how do we come to, and like explore some of that side as well as these other institutes, and you'll be a well-rounded person. And
Yes.
I'm very encouraged that you were able to deconstruct in amongst your busy schedule. I applaud you for that. I know that is not easy.
Thank
It
you.
was not easy for me.
Really
And
not.
I'm glad that you are on a path of seeking what truth is. I would just ask you to like next maybe decide what truth even means. Maybe go look up what the definition
Yeah.
of truth is, and that's an important step. But thank you for the call,
For
Lulu.
sure.
If you
Thank
have
you
more
so much.
thoughts and call us again some other time, and we'll explore next step.
Thank
Thanks.
you, both of you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate both of you, and thank you for showing up and you know
All
all
right.
that good
Thanks, Lulu.
stuff.
Good luck with
Bye.
the kids. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's, I mean, to be fair, yes, it's difficult. I think one of the things we should probably do is to remind people that merely going about and doing Google searches and buying into air quotes science is not doing research. Um, but in the armchair sense of, oh, I've been researching this. Well, if you're going to just accept what HeartMath has to say, and then when I point out that HeartMath is an institute that believes in all kinds of pseudoscience stuff and has a primary thing that there's some coherence between and cooperative alignment between the hearts of humans, animals, trees, and planets. And when I point out that that's just pseudoscience claptrap, and your answer is, okay, you sound more like the person who's going to just go with the last thing you heard until somebody else comes along with something that says it sounds better. And the best advice I can give you is don't go along with anything until there's a good reason to believe it's true. Because if you do that, the other one, you're just going to constantly be sitting there going, here's what I believe now until somebody proves it wrong. Oh, somebody proved that wrong. Okay, I'm going to go with this until it proves wrong. And all that is getting somebody else to do the homework that you could do on yourself, which is to say, you know what? I'm not convinced of this. What would it take? This is why Paul's talking about look into epistemology. What would it take and what should it take for me to actually be convinced of that? But if you think there's that spiritual means something to the point where you're going to use it to have spiritual explorations, at a minimum, you should be able to say what you mean by that. Like if I say I'm going to explore the psychology of humans, then I should be able to say, by psychology, I'm talking about specific perceptive brain states that amplify our character or show demonstrations of what's in our mind. the processes by which we feel things and share emotes and all of those things that get together into the internal model that we all seem to have. And if I ran across somebody who said, I don't have any internal model like that, then we'd have to have a discussion about, okay, am I the weird one? Are you the weird one? Is there just more to this than either of us saw? But if I talk to Paul and say, hey, Paul, you know how you're sitting around and you're like, I'm really irritated at what just happened. That is what I'm describing as a part of your psychology. Something about your brain and you are reacting to something, and it's a different reaction from what somebody else might have under similar circumstances, and a different reaction than you would have under different circumstances. And so, if you and I react differently to different stimuli, which we absolutely do, which is why it's very much I'm going to be of no more use in this call. Please do something because I can't have a conversation about anything spiritual as long as people can't define it. And
Yeah.
and when you talk about you mean the literal by heart, you mean the literal organ that pumps. I was not expecting her at all to say that she meant the literal organ that pumps blood because even the Heart Math Institute is not advocating that this coherence is between, the brain and the organ, but between the pseudoscientific metaphorical heart of the planet and the heart of the trees and the heart of the animals other than us. Um,
I was equally shocked that she said yes.
yeah,
My line of questioning got spun there. But anyway, but I do applaud. I applaud anyone's effort to seek truth rather than be complacent. Just
yep,
don't believe everything.
yeah. Go out, be a seeker, seek all the things, but be a skeptic. And by
Mm,
skepticism, I'm advocating for the desire to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible, the desire to make your internal model of reality as accurately mapped to reality as possible. And what that means is if you hear something like, oh, I think I have a connection to a higher power. What does that mean? I don't know what a higher power is. I hear people talk about it all the time. Oh, but Matt, like God. Okay, I don't think a God exists. Well, I'm just saying that there's some intelligence out there that's greater than us. And I'm like, okay, first of all, the universe is a big place. Um, does it seem unlikely that we are the only life? Yes. Does it seem unlikely we're the only intelligent life? Yes. Does it seem unlikely that we are the most intelligent life? Yes. I mean, all of those things potentially seem unlikely. Do I think I have or could have a connection to some more intelligent life out there? Not that I'm aware of. And I certainly don't think that such a connection could exist without my knowledge, awareness, and understanding of it. I don't know how you can have a connection. That's like saying you've got a God, but he never communicates with you, but he's definitely looking out for you, even though you can't demonstrate that he's looking out for you. It's like saying not just that you have a boyfriend or girlfriend who goes to another school, but that you've also never actually talked to and that doesn't interact with you in any detectable way.
right.
I
And
need a way to distinguish between delusions.
does this imply that ants or that other creatures on and Lulu might say yes, but like we're more intelligent than slugs,
Chimps.
chimps. Does that mean that there is a connection between like a literal physical connection, or is it just similarity and common ancestry? Like
Yeah, I
this
don't
whole
get that
notion
that's
of
what they mean.
yeah, I
I
don't
don't
think
get
that's
that
what they
that's
mean.
what they mean, your intelligence. What they mean is they think there's some thing, whether they think it's an agent or a being is nebulous, that is the incredibly powerful and personable, even if it's impersonal. I don't know how you resolve that
Mm,
thing that serves as the fabric or governance or connecting material in the universe. Except that I don't think I have a connection to Jupiter in any substantive way.
no.
And we know, and by the way, heart math also dips into astrology as well. Um, we know astrology is nonsense. There, the where the stars and everything else were in relation to everything else is, well, that's always changing. But where they were the moment you were born, um, is not going to be any sort of significant contributing factor to any fact about your life. And the proof is, I can disprove astrology with one word, which I've done a hundred times, which is twins, because twins have the same birth information, but not the same lives. But there are people who are like, well, twins are technically born, slightly apart or whatever. So if you, no astrologer is going to try and map your birthday down to the second and say that 1 second either way, or 10 seconds either way, or 10 minutes either way is some sort of significance that they can demonstrate. They might make the claim, but here's the thing: we know for a fact that there are enough human beings, and we can branch out beyond human beings here in just a second. There are enough human beings giving birth that it has absolutely been the case that two individuals from different mothers have been born at the same second, like
Yep.
emerged at the same second. We know, we know this happens. There's just too many people giving birth. But why is it we only do astrological charts for humans? Why aren't we doing astrological charts for rats and snakes and puppies? I mean, I hatched out 3 sets of twin snakes in the last year, and there's nothing that's more fun than cutting the egg open and seeing two little heads in there, even though it's unlikely either of them are going to make it, or at most one of them's going to. Every now we have a pair in the other room. Both of them are survived and are thriving and they're growing. I'm excited. But go ahead, run an astrological chart for my snakes, that set of twins in there. And do you run it from the day that I cut the egg, or the day that they pipped the egg, or the day that they would have come out of the egg? Because after you cut the egg, they stay in the egg to continue absorbing the nutrients in there for a day or two, whether they pip it on their own or you cut it. And then, is that their hatch date? Is that when they are born? It is bizarre to think that, ooh, let's figure out when and where you were born and do some star calculations. And I can tell you, trust me, today is a bad day to buy a lottery ticket. Yeah, every day's a bad fucking day to buy a lottery ticket. The odds are never in your favor.
Something the math ain't mathing, the science ain't science.